Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for hanging with us. I see we're about 5 minutes behind time. We have 18 people with us from a technological perspective. We also have, and that's so far, I bet we'll have more joining us. We also have co-chairs, Kent and Janan, here with us in the room. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? I see a lot of thumbs, so thank you. I will go through a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation tonight to talk about where we've been and to also talk about where we think we are. But I want you to know the real purpose of tonight is really for you as a task force to help us put a bow on the process before we turn it over to the Board of Education. There are a couple of things that I think are really important to say tonight. One is, I think we've had a lot of input, but we haven't had all of the input we need so far. So if you're wondering, is tonight important? It's incredibly important to me, and I believe it's incredibly important to our Board of Education. So before we took our break for COVID-19, one of the things that the board members talked to me about was, we'd really like to bring the task force back together in the end. And I heard from a couple of you as well. And the thing that I heard, maybe to summarize what I heard, was I want to make sure that I have a chance to say, and you can fill in the blank, whatever it is that you want to say. And I want to make sure that when tonight is over, that however you fill in that blank, that you fill it in. I'm not going to fill it in for you. Nobody in this room, there are about 8 or 10 of us in this room. We're not going to fill it in for you. You're going to fill it in for us, and you're going to have that chance. I'll go through about a 10-minute presentation. And for those of you who know me well, nobody in this room believes that it'll be 10 minutes. They believe it'll be longer. And so I'll do my best to keep it at about 10. And then I'm going to turn it over to Kent and Janan. And I want you to speak in an unfiltered fashion. You make sure that your opinions and your thoughts get to, I'm going to say get to me. It doesn't matter if they get to me. That your opinions and your thoughts get to our Board of Education. We have our board vice president and board president here with us in the room tonight. Cynthia Mickelson and Carly Ryder are here, so they will hear you right away in real time tonight. And the rest of our board members will see this recorded as anybody else in the community can as well. So with that, we'll get started with the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you for being with us here tonight. Okay, I'm hoping you can see the PowerPoint presentation. I can see a couple of you. Paul and Linda, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see this? Great, okay, you're the two I could see on my screen. So the PowerPoint.
It's not in presentation mode. We see the whole PowerPoint.
Okay. We're going to attempt to make that adjustment right now.
Screen sharing. Stop share. I'm going to screen share. Anybody?
Can somebody pull up the PowerPoint and bring it to me on the, just on the screen if we can't figure out how to do this? The good news is I can talk you through this.
And I did send out the PowerPoint as well. You should receive that in your email. Can you see the PowerPoint now? It says Final Boundary Task Force Meeting, May 26th. Can you see that slide advance? You see another slide now? Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go and just assume that you see this then. Really, since our, and by the way, those aren't part of my 10 minutes. My 10 minutes start now. Since our last meeting, we've received quite a bit of input. First of all, from the community, we've had a tremendous response on Let's Talk, an app that is on our school district website. At last count, I know we're well over 400 submissions on Let's Talk. So that's one great piece of feedback we've had. We also had virtual community engagement sessions. And at those virtual community engagement sessions, we generally had between 100 and 200 people on our Facebook Live portion of those engagement sessions. We don't know how many people we had on K-Learn TV. And as I mentioned several times to other people, if we would have had 100 to 200 people in an auditorium, I would have felt great about the participation. So I think we had a good number of people at least who participated there.
To let Dina in also. Doing two things at once. Screen sharing is pause, new
Next one. Okay, so what happens from here? You can go ahead and make that bigger, or I can do it off here. Really, after tonight, the next big piece is June 3rd, next Wednesday. Our school board will have a work session that will start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at IPC, and at that meeting, we'll review the entire process. Our board will see the entire process up until this point. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say at this point, I don't believe our board is just going to simply endorse what we have shown as options. I believe our board is still very open-minded to what you have to say tonight, to anything that comes in through Let's Talk, or in any information sharing that comes in between now and June 22nd. Those of us who have worked on this don't find that offensive. We find that truly to be part of the process, as this is truly an exercise that is for the community. This isn't the superintendent's exercise. This isn't any of our employees' exercise. This is for the community. And I believe, while I do not speak for the board, I believe that is their impression as well. So June 3rd will be an important date, in the next important date in this process. After June 3rd, we'll have a June 8th board meeting and a June 22nd board meeting. It is our hope that on June 22nd, the board will adopt the final boundaries. And June 8th, I think, is an important date to have in there too, just because that's another opportunity for public sharing. And we'll at least have an update from the June 3rd work session at that June 8th meeting. And then June 22nd will be the point that I've been waiting for, I would say, and that's the conclusion of the process. But it's only the conclusion of the process in terms of where are we now, because whatever that final product ends up being, some real work has to be done after that. So once that is done at the end of June, we get into July and we spend the next 6 months really educating the community, notifying our students, notifying our families, notifying our staff of what that means, what the new boundaries look like, and they'll have a year to get comfortable with that. And the reason that I say 6 months and not 12 months is open enrollment is in December of this year for the following school year. So as you can see, time is kind of clicking away. And so by December of this year, hopefully we've really done a good job of educating and communicating with our public as to what those new boundaries look like, so that in the August of 2021, just about 14 months from now, we're ready to open up our new buildings with our new boundaries, and people feeling very comfortable with where they go at that point. Okay, here's what we heard, or at least what we think we heard from you as a task force in your first 3 meetings. One is that we want more Whittier options. We want to make sure that we've exercised all opportunities we have around the Whittier boundary. We also heard from you that the final boundary task force meetings, or at least at the time of the 3rd meeting, it wasn't decided if an additional meeting would be held. Here we are having that additional meeting. We also talked a little bit about the disbursement of specialty programs, particularly where Whittier and George McGovern Middle School were both mentioned as possibilities. I think we still need to look at, and if you paid attention at all to the community engagement, we really need to look at our programs and figuring out in conjunction and concurrently with our boundary situation where the best place for some of our programs are. We also talked as a task force about the importance of balancing enrollment based upon socioeconomic status and not just geographical considerations. That topic was split amongst the group, and one that I hope that we get to again tonight. I think that's a critical piece that we need to continue to have a conversation about. It is something that came up, sometimes veiled, sometimes not veiled in the community engagement topic. And I think it's a critical piece as we look at rebalancing our buildings when we move forward. What do we want to do as a community? And then also, we heard from you to make sure that we do right by open enrollment and how we look at open enrollment going forward. From there, we had the community engagement meetings. And some themes emerged from those community engagement meetings. I'm sure you know it by now. We broadcast those on YouTube. We had our district cable station, KLRN TV, also had those information sessions, and people from the community were able to call up and dial in via phone link and ask questions and provide input, and they did. I already mentioned that we thought we had quite a few people, somewhere between 100 and maybe 200 at each of the sessions. And we were able to get to all phone calls except for a couple in the first session. So I felt good about being able to hear from folks. And there were several themes that emerged as we thought through the various phone calls that we received. And those were, number one, safe routes to schools. Do we put an emphasis on what those look like and today? And if we change our boundaries, not if, when we change our boundaries, how will we make sure that we still have safe routes to schools in place? Transportation options, what do those look like for the new high school? The location of the middle school Spanish immersion and honors program, what does that look like? Good. I lost PowerPoint there for just a minute. The Roosevelt High School and Jefferson High School boundaries were a big part of the conversation. And certainly we talked a little bit about Washington and some about Lincoln as well. But the majority of the phone calls that dealt with high school boundaries dealt with Roosevelt and Jefferson. We talked about programming capacity at the new high school and what that looked like. And then something else that came up a number of times was what is the distance to the proposed assigned new school compared to the current school I attend? And one of the things that I think is important to think about as we look through really most of these issues are, what do they look like today? Are all of our safe routes as safe as they can be? Are the Spanish immersion and honors programs appropriately placed today? My point is this: most of the issues that we talk about when we redo boundaries are issues that we should be talking about even if we didn't redo boundaries. So we've got kids right now who live fairly near, and I wish I knew the exact distance, but live fairly near Washington High School, who drive to Roosevelt High School as their home attendance center today. So I want you to know that our boundaries today aren't perfect. And even if we didn't have new schools that would prompt us to redo our boundaries, we should be looking at redoing our boundaries anyway. So, and so we are. So on Let's Talk, we also had a number of themes that came through. And those themes are the Cherry Lake area, and continuing to attend Memorial Middle School. or option B for the middle school that has everything west of the TLS Road attending McGovern Middle School. Those things came up with some frequency. Open enrollment options also came through on Let's Talk. The middle school specialty programs also came up. Equalizing diversity came up as a topic on Let's Talk. JFK going to Edison Middle School, JFK Elementary School going to Edison Middle School, concerns about the length of the route and the ride, the boundary between Roosevelt High School and Jefferson High School, where that should be versus where it is, concern with the group of students who might be closer to Roosevelt but going to Jefferson, and the concern with splitting our elementary schools, specifically Discovery and Oscar Howe. So really you see the same things emerge again on Let's Talk that you really saw in our community engagement meetings and somewhat came through in our task force meeting as well. A couple more and I'm done. The charge, if you remember your charge, I will tell you, number one is to develop recommendations on middle and high school boundary changes and make sure that they coincide with the opening of the schools in the fall of 2021. And number two, provide guidance regarding student transition as it pertains to grandfathered students, siblings, and open enrollment, etc. We have a couple of assumptions. One, Thomas Jefferson High School will open in the fall of 2021. Ben Rifle Middle School will be opened in the fall of 2021. And down the road, we will have a new elementary school that we have to consider for boundary changes as well, but that's not part of the charge this go around. Okay, the next slide shows you a map. If our high school were divided today, we just give you an idea of how that would shake out and how the limits would result in population distribution to our high schools. And I think one point that's really important to see is if you look on the western boundary and you see the number 712 in a fairly small rectangular area, I believe on the north, that is 12th Street, and on the south, you see 26th Street. On the east, you have Marion? 229. 229, and on the west, you have TLS Road or thereabouts. So that defines that rectangle. And that's the point of a lot of conversation with people saying, I live closer to Roosevelt, but I'm going to go to Jefferson, or I live closer to Memorial Middle School, and I'm slotted to go to George McGovern Middle School. And then one of the reasons we show you this is just to see the density of that population. And that's where folks get emotional, understandably so, but they get emotional. And that's where we have to figure out how best do we serve that whole map and not just that rectangle, all the while understanding that there's some real emotional issues attached to that 712 inside that rectangle. So with that is just kind of an overview of where we are right now. I'm going to ask our co-chairs and Janan to come forward. I'm going to ask them to take over this meeting. Please give us your comments unfiltered, and I'm going to let Kent and Janan go from here. As I mentioned earlier, those of you who know Janan know what a bright star he is in our community, and his star is just beginning to rise, in my opinion. His respectful way is something that I admire, and I hope you will as well. I'm pleased as punch to be able to have him here tonight. And after saying that about Janan, I will tell you that Kent Alberty will do whatever in the hell he wants, so it really doesn't matter what I say. Actually, I have great respect for both of these people, and it's truly their show and your show from here. Please know the Board of Education and the administration here at the Instructional Planning Center want to hear from you tonight. So thanks for joining us. Kent and Janan.
I'm going to just pop in everything going okay from everybody's perspective at home. You can see, you can hear, thumbs up. Okay, fantastic. So now we have to plug in a speaker, and so I'm going to do that in just a second. Remind when you are speaking, please unmute yourself. Janan and Kent are going to call upon people. So indicate when you have something you'd like to say, perhaps with a show of hands. They will call on you, and then please unmute your mic so that we can hear you and the rest of the group can hear you as well. So I'll turn it over to the gentleman.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. Thank you for making time to be here for our fourth and final session. I know that Kent and I are so glad that this worked out for us to be able to be together. And you can't see the room, but I see a lot of smiling faces and other individuals who are eager to move forward with this process. We do want this to be a conversation among the task force. So that is why Kent and I are going to usher along the conversation. Joe, our expert, is with us as well. So he is, as always, he'll be welcome to, or he's welcome to chime in at any point. And Kent, did I miss anything? All right. So you are on a louder speaker now. Is that right, Deanne? Okay. So let's kick that off with any questions or comments that you have. Could we advance the slide to that final? Oh, you took it down? Okay.
But I can put it back up.
That would be helpful.
Except I have to, because I can't find it. Here we go.
Technology, bear with us.
Okay, so screen share. Is it this one you'd like?
The map. I assume that that's where probably most questions.
I can't stand back here again. Then they won't come.
There you go. Click on participants.
I did, and then it just shows me the list.
More.
All right, hang with us, guys. We're trying to find your pictures here. Carly, I can't get the pictures back on the screen. What's that? Can you resume share? I don't want their pictures. Let's see. Go to participants. We're going to stop the share. There you are. Sorry, everybody. I'll go back. Were you, any of you, able to see the map that we just put up a few moments ago? You were. Okay. We couldn't see you, so we want to see the map, and we want to see you. But I'll try to do that here just in the boardroom instead. So, okay. If you want to have the map available in front of you as questions come, do your best to pull that up if you can on your computer, what was sent to you previously.
All right, who has the first question? Mr. Pizer, go ahead.
More of a just kind of final thoughts. First off, I just wanted to say thank you to Janan and Kent and the administration and the school board for having this task force. I think it's been very valuable in terms of our ability to offer input, as well as be, knowledgeable and be able to share that information in the community. So, and I also want to say thank you for the way that it's been conducted. I think there's a lot of open communication and a lot of opportunity for changes. There's been a lot of tweaks and modifications along the way. So I think that's also been very positive. My two parting thoughts is that one, I think that regardless of what comes out, this is not a final say on people's lives per se. Even with the new boundaries, whatever they may be, people will have options. They can open enroll, they can opt to go to private school, they can opt to move. So I think that has to be remembered when we're going through this process of figuring out what the final boundaries are. Just because the boundaries change and become finalized for the next period of time doesn't mean that people are stuck. And so I think that's important to remember. The second thing is that my hope is that there's an appreciation for the kind of watershed moment that the school board is facing for our community, and that we will take that idea of the larger community into account and not just focus on a small group of people and not fall prey to the not in my backyard mentality. And so my hope is that they take the entire community into consideration and vote with that in mind. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Other thoughts or questions? Linda.
I have a question on that boundary, that rectangular boundary that you talked about. And it was T. Ellis Road to I-29. What are those other streets?
12th Street on the north and 26th Street on the south.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Another question or comment? Anita.
So one of the things that I want to understand is, are we really putting forth two options for the middle school and the high school boundaries for the school board to react to? And is that the process that we're in?
So you have two options for everybody to consider. Neither of those options is the final.
Right. And as Dr. Maher has said, I believe he said that at the virtual community engagement sessions, there are two kind of high school options and two kind of middle school options. What I believe the school board will do, and in my opinion should do, is look at those options, and through all of the input that this task force has given, all of the input that was given during the virtual meetings, plus conversations that I know all of those board members are having with other community members, their final attendance center options for high school and middle school will look kind of like the two options we've looked at, but I expect that they will make some perhaps minor changes to those. And I think that's what they're tasked with. I think that's what they should do.
I just think it's really important that, that gets communicated, because I think that the public at large feels like there's 4 maps to look at. And in reality, it may change from what they see as those 4 maps today.
Now, what will come out of, I believe, from what I've been hearing is that the meeting on June 22nd is when the school board will vote on what they believe is the best option for the high schools, best option for the middle schools. Coming from that meeting will be the boundaries that will move forward for the Sioux Falls School District. Is that? Other comments or questions? Well, this didn't last as long as I thought it might. I hope that we have more input from all of you as we move forward. I was hoping to maybe wrap things up around 8 o'clock. We've got 25 minutes, and I saw Maher do a little song and dance at one of those meetings when it got quiet. I don't want to see that again. Megan.
Yeah, I kind of echo some of what Anthony had said, that I think that the process went very well, and I think I saw some commentary in some of the emails that were exchanged after the last meeting about how perhaps the expectation was that these task force meetings might be a little bit more contentious than they were. And so for what it's worth, I kind of had that same wonderment going into this process about how contentious these meetings might be, and whether we would be able to really put our heads together and have a civil discourse about these issues, given that they are very emotional for a lot of people. And I'll say, especially in this political climate, I was very pleasantly surprised. I think everybody did a very good job and took it very seriously and had a lot of civil, responsible conversations to try to move the ball forward. And so I want to thank everybody. It's been a wonderful experience. And I think everybody put in a lot of hard work and listened to each other, and it was very productive. So thanks.
Thank you.
Say, Ken, Tony Erickson here. This might have gotten brought up before, but as far as high school numbers with the honors program and the Spanish, do you know what they're looking at total at the high school level?
For those two programs specifically?
For honors and for Spanish immersion?
Correct, for both of them.
Okay, next year there are 53 at the high school and Spanish immersion, high school level. And 30 honors.
That's total, or is that per class?
Per class.
Okay, so approximately about 350 to 375 kids roughly?
Just for those programs,
yeah. Yeah, just for those programs, yes.
And maybe this has been discussed before, but what about moving both of those programs to Jefferson High School? Have we discussed that before?
Internally, we have.
Internally, that has been discussed. And I think that, and I know that during one of our meetings, we did talk about where we kind of thought as a task force, some of the programs, specialty programs could be moved to. And one of the things that we said was, well, we're looking at boundaries, not necessarily at where programs are housed. My feeling strongly is that That's all part and parcel of what we're looking at. Yes, it's boundaries, but what we're needing to do is have the enrollment equitably divided between all of the high schools and all of the middle schools. Part of that conversation has to be where those specialty programs are located. So I
Sure,
think,
my thought would be is, go ahead, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so the thought would be, I mean, you know, if both those programs would go to Jefferson, that would balance out, I think, the socioeconomic numbers at Jefferson, and also maybe free up some students that are currently at Roosevelt that could go to Lincoln, and then that would free up some people that are closer to Roosevelt as well. So I think it could be a win-win on many different sides if that would be considered by the board.
I'm told that's a legitimate consideration. Somebody agrees with me and with you, Tony. Corey, go ahead.
I'm in agreement with Tony on that, to move them there. I would say you look at it further. I think this is part of the discussion because option A split the two up. So I believe these programs are part of the discussion here for our boundaries, where they go. I think we need to look at that, of putting those up in George McGovern. For whatever reason, McGovern, nobody wants to go there. It doesn't seem like. It's a hot topic amongst everybody of why they shouldn't be sent there. So if we look at bringing those up to George McGovern and pull them out of the two in option A, you would balance them out. And I understand the school district says keep them central because more kids. But when I looked at the numbers are drawing from the central part of the city and not our outliers. So let's give some of the other people more of a chance that way by moving them, or at least considering moving them to George McGovern, or maybe even Whittier, and separating them that way too.
Absolutely, that is great feedback. And I did see Cynthia taking good notes. So I think that the school board will certainly consider that. And we did have some good conversation about that as well during our meetings. Are there some additional thoughts regarding moving the specialty programs to Jefferson?
Well, I think maybe first just to clarify whether we're having a middle school discussion or whether we're having a high school discussion. I would like to understand, because I kind of thought that honors ended at the end of middle school and that every high school has advanced AP programs that could accommodate an honors kid rolling up into basically their high school of choice. But so first, maybe to clarify, are we talking about a high school discussion or are we talking about a middle school discussion?
It started as a high school discussion, but middle school was also mentioned. So why don't we go back and talk through the high school piece, and then we can transition and talk about the middle school as well. And honors does end after 8th grade. Mm-hmm. Dr. Maher just clarified that. Thank you.
Right.
All high schools have the same AP rigorous coursework.
And then the advanced placement coursework is aligned throughout the high schools.
So I think some of that may just be more of an enrollment clarification, because for some reason I think that Lincoln has kind of been deemed as, or maybe misunderstood as, being the only high school that could really handle the curriculum for all of these kids. But the reality is that really is dispersed very evenly across the high schools. And so people should be going to the high schools in their respective neighborhoods, even if they came through the honors program.
Corey, go ahead.
Just so I'm understanding, the 300 plus students that we were talking about, is that just in Spanish immersion then that would be going in through the high school?
That Spanish immersion enrollment grows every year. So next year it's 53, and then it gets to 60, and then it gets to 80. But it's and they'll get up to over 100.
So it'll grow gradually each year, and they foresee it reaching over 100 students by 2024.
per class, so 400 total through 9th and 12th?
That's correct.
So the question to me is the same. Will the high schools each have Spanish programs that those kids coming out of middle school will be able to assimilate into their neighborhood high schools? Or will there be a high school that specializes in Spanish?
Currently, we have one Spanish immersion high school. As we grow, it's likely we'll need more than one.
At this time, there is only one Spanish immersion high school, but as we grow as a community and school district, there may be an opportunity to have more than one.
What's the cap or the max, I guess you could say, then that Jefferson's being built for?
It's 1,800 students, the same as the other.
1,800, which is the same as the other 3 high schools.
So is that 90% or is that the 100%?
Yes.
1,800 is the ideal capacity. It has more capacity, just like Washington.
Yep. So what I'm hearing is,
capacity is 1,800 to 2,400 students.
sure. So what I'm hearing is that all of the schools have about that 1,800 capacity mark, but they are all filled well above that.
So I hope I'm not, misrepresenting this, but it seems like those specialty programs really, the discussion needs to start at a middle school discussion. And it would be really great if the district could help us understand what the timeline is that, Spanish could be spread across all the high schools, just like AP is spread across all the high schools. Because if we understood that timeline, then really our focus is more of a middle school discussion. Unless I'm misunderstanding it, but that's how I see it.
I know there's not a firm date for when we will go beyond one building with Spanish immersion program. We know that this year we'll be moving 53 8th graders into 9th grade as Spanish immersion students. If projections hold true in 2024, we will move 110 Spanish immersion students from 8th grade to 9th grade.
Dr. Maher, would you mind coming up here and explaining that? The expert is coming up.
I wish I could say yes or no to your answer or to your question. Here's what I would say to hopefully help explain the situation. From this year, we have 53 8th graders who will be transitioning to 9th grade in the Spanish immersion program at Lincoln High School. We know that in 2024, we have one, if projections hold true, and these are kids currently enrolled in Spanish immersion, we will have 110 8th graders who will be moving from 8th grade to 9th grade. Last year, we started a dual immersion program in 2 schools to go in addition with our Sonia Sotomayor, our Spanish immersion elementary. So I see that program continuing to get bigger and bigger. But my crystal ball tells me that at some point, we'll need Spanish immersion offerings at 2 high schools. That might be 2024, but that's the most definitive I can be today. It would shock me if some point down the road, we don't have Spanish immersion at 2 high schools, okay? So then I think you're right. Well, what happens at the middle school? And at the middle school, I think the same thing happens as we bring as Sonia Sotomayor has grown, and as we have dual immersion programs now in the district, I believe our 6th grade Spanish immersion students will grow. At some point, will it make sense to have Spanish immersion at 2 middle schools? My crystal ball says yes, but I can't tell you when that is. I don't even have a guess for you today. I think the first marker for us as a district, this is a best guess, is 2024 for the high school. Does that help a little bit?
Well, it certainly helps bring some clarity to the timeline. I don't know that it provides any clear direction as what the best decision is as it relates to boundary right now, because if we make a decision for middle school, you know, again, to Corey's point of trying to help out that west side a little bit, you know, will the solution be in place by the time high school comes around, or will we have middle schools that will divide into 2 high schools? So I think it's we make the decision with what the best information that we have right now.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think Tony and Corey and you have really framed that issue well. I know for sure from conversations I've had with individual board members, I know they're well aware of that as well. So it's a real issue that they'll have to figure out for 2021, but also with some sense of prophecy as to what the future holds.
And Dr. Maher, Tony here.
Yeah.
Is it true that Lincoln High School is the only high school that offers a geography class right now at the high school level in Spanish?
A Spanish immersion course that is a geography course at the high school, yes. And the reason for that is it's our only Spanish immersion high school.
Okay.
Back to Janan.
Oh,
This is what it says.
I got it. Thank you. Corey, go ahead.
And so it seems like these 2 programs have been they took up a lot of the community engagements. We listened there, and they're taking up a lot of our time now here. And it's a very small percentage that we're not looking as the community as a whole. If we're truly just focusing on any programs, we're not looking at it, what's best for the community as a whole. We're just thinking of a small population of students, what's best for them. So I think we're getting off track of the boundaries by just focusing on these 2 programs of what's out there, and we're losing our focus here. 5 priorities our board gave us to begin with, and I think that's where we should be leading our discussions tonight, more so than where should we put these. I do agree with Ron. Why move them to McGovern if we're going to keep them at Lincoln? I was just saying if we're going to move them to Jefferson, McGovern would make the most sense. It's just down there, but I guess to try to get us back on track, maybe we should look at the boundaries more so than.
Great, thank you. Linda, go ahead.
My concern is that after listening to the community responses on those calls and a lot of the things that have been on Facebook and on social media, most of the concern to me seems to be with the boundary issues on the west side. And I think that we need to talk more about that, because not everybody's going to be happy no matter what we do, but I think we need to direct some more attention to that tonight.
Certainly. Angela, go ahead.
Thank you, Janan. As I listened to the community, I had a great appreciation for the quality of the feedback that was received. And there was one thing that I couldn't quite shake, and I thought it was interesting earlier, and I wish I could remember the exact example. But Dr. Maher stated that, you know, our boundaries aren't perfect today. And he gave an example of one little pocket that might not be, you know, perfectly done in a high school. And here's what I tried to determine feedback from our community. Some of that feedback that we're hearing is because it's new. Some of that feedback is because it hasn't yet been, we're asking for input. But I do feel like we heard so many comments on the specific aspects of the West Side that I think it's not something that, oh, you know, when we're done and time has passed, the board has made their decision, it'll all be okay. I think there might be a flaws that we were hearing with all that feedback. I would like us to talk about that. You know, at some point, yeah, when the decision's made, people go back to normal, but it's possible, given the broad quantity that we heard, that we really do need to talk about that. So I'm pro West Side discussion. Do we have more than 5 minutes so for this? Are we on a hard stop at 8? Because I do think that's a worthy discussion.
I agree with you. Let's keep going, Angela.
So do we want to start on the West Side with middle school or high school, or do we want to address both simultaneously?
I think for the sake of keeping things as clean as possible, since we're all connecting via Zoom, let's talk about the middle school first, and then let's transition to the high school. What feedback do you all have regarding the middle school?
Linda mentioned social media, and if you're watching it, you probably saw that I was pretty active in there. One, trying to keep the calm as best as I hate seeing our public fighting amongst each other. I mean, this is for the best of our children. They're our future. I think everybody can be in agreement that we want the best for the children out there. If we start at that point, we're good. One thing that was brought up early on was either our second task force meeting, the end of the first, somewhere in there though, that Whittier is a true neighborhood. Well, I truly want to see all our schools be a true neighborhood school. And I think the West Side has truly shown that in how active they've been on that they want to be a true neighborhood. And so if I think we look at that and look at Memorial specifically, how can we keep them a neighborhood school? Picking out those pockets that are just right across T. Ellis Road, about a mile away, isn't the neighborhood aspect. And so I hate to throw JFK under the bus, but JFK's kind of the ones that don't have a boundary around Memorial. Discovery definitely does. Oscar Howe does, and Pettigrew even has them right there on the boundaries of Memorial. So my thought is we either have to look at option A or some other piece to try to keep that Memorial boundaries together somewhat more.
Well, Corey, I think keeping neighborhood boundaries in a perfect world would be a really ideal solution. But I think when we look at the growth that we have experienced as a community within our school district in that west side, and with Memorial being the 5th highest enrollment school, or sixth highest enrollment school in the state, it's grown beyond where we can keep it that true neighborhood school. And Roosevelt is kind of feeling, of course, that same pressure as we move forward. I just don't see how we can do that when we've added on to Memorial already 3-4 times to accommodate the neighborhood enrollment. I don't see how we can make that happen. As much as I would like to, I just don't think that we can realistically keep that.
Well, and I agree with you there, Ken, on the numbers aspect, but I think option A definitely shows us that we can. Option A just pulls JFK out and moves them to Edison, in which we've been told historically that's where they are at. But that keeps that neighborhood aspect then for Memorial on that side of it. Now, is the area going to grow? Not as much down here on the southwest side as it just because we start then getting into the T aspect there. So by looking at it, option A, I think, does keep it that way. So we've shown we can do it. It's just now figuring out what's the best option to do that. So every other school seems to get their neighborhoods. So to say, well, we can't on the southwest side, that's what's pulling the community apart and getting the southwest people involved, is by telling them, well, we got to break up your neighborhood. Every other school gets a piece. So we have to be careful when we say that. They're going to bound together, and we've seen it. And I agree with them that let's keep the neighborhoods together as much as possible. I want to try to keep as many elementaries transitioning into middle school together, just to help that transition into that middle school. And option A, in my opinion, keeps them, at least on the west side or the southwest side, more so to get into that middle school transition where now they start meeting their friends, where you know they're going to have to separate then up and up.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Other input on that topic?
I guess I have a comment. This is Angela again. For those on the Board of Education who will actually be making this decision, I think that I thought Corey and a lot of people have said a lot of great things very powerfully about this entire process. My comment would be, when you look at all of the different, the initial video that we listened to from Cynthia at our very first Boundaries Task Force meeting, these are the ideals that we want to be following and looking at as we go through this process. And I do feel as though when I listen to that community feedback, members of the community might not have had a clear, I think they're very well informed, but I don't know that people had the same definition of some of those goals and some of those ideals. We heard some of those questioned as to why are we sacrificing, certain subsets of the population to honor certain values. And I think that I would just really encourage the Board of Education to really look at those process standpoints. But I think there are going to be some challenging decisions that need to be made. But it does seem like the West Side is that really challenging pocket, both from a middle school and a high school perspective. And high school maybe even more so.
Thank you, Angela, for that feedback. Go ahead, Dina.
I think it's really important as we look at this process broadly to remember that boundaries need to be fluid. We are all stumbling because the boundaries have been in the past 25 years and we haven't had to do this process. And I was really pleased with each of the information sessions and the community input sessions that Dr. Maher reminded us that maybe boundaries need to be part of that strategic planning. Because I think what happens is, what I have heard is, oh, we have to move because my 5-year-old, I want them to go to this high school. And that's a mindset we have to start unconnecting and start re-engaging people with. Our programming shifts, what we can offer is going to shift, and our boundaries are going to have to shift. And if we make that more commonplace, I think that people might understand it in a better way than they do now. And I think people are just fearful of it because we haven't done it very often.
Thank you, Dina. Any other input?
Hi, this is Emily. You can't see me. My video froze, but I'm going to speak anyway. One thing I wanted to say, I know a lot of people wanted option B because it really helps the percentage at McGovern. My one issue with B is those Oscar Howe kids would get shipped up to McGovern, and then they would have to turn around in 3 years and come back to Roosevelt. And I think doing that in any area, whether it's Oscar Howe or any other area, you're forcing those kids to make friends in middle school, and then you're going to turn around 3 years later and pull them out of there and put them in a high school where they haven't been around anybody for 3 years. So I just want to make sure that the board members take that into consideration, that they aren't forcing these kids to make new friends in middle school and then turning around and yanking them back out?
Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, I'll speak of that. You know, we have all three of our boys. One is in high school now, but all three of them went through All City Elementary. There's one class per grade at All City, and our oldest one, when he went to Memorial, there was one other student that went there along with him. And you know, I think it's important to teach our kids at a young age that change is going to happen, and you're going to have to meet new friends when they get in high school. 3 or 4 years down the road, they're going to be going off to college and meeting new friends. So I think it's important, no matter what happens, that we have to impress upon our kids that's a part of life, that changes, meeting new friends. I was the third graduating class at Roosevelt. I know I'm old. Back in 1994. But I had many friends that had to transition over from Washington to Roosevelt their junior and senior year. One of them being Dan Conrad, who's now going to be the principal at Jefferson. So he's gone through it. And talking to a lot of these same individuals 25 years later, they want to change it. They want to change a thing about doing that. Yes, so it's tough at first, but you know, talking to them now, it was a way to start new traditions, and you know, they really thrived doing it. So I would just say, you know, change is going to happen to the kids, and to make the most of it, meet new friends.
Thank you, Tony. I see that there was a question asked, is the Board of Education looking for us or looking to us for our group recommendation for these options? I think at this time they are looking for feedback. However, if you have recommendations, you can send those to Deanne and they will be forwarded on to the appropriate contacts.
Maybe just to tag on a little bit to what Tony said, because I agree with really everything that Tony said. One of the things that I've tried to remind myself as well as we've been going through this process is that, you know, we're trying to help our community have the best public school education that they possibly have. And some of that really involves efficiencies, so that the majority of our money can be spent in educating students. So yes, change is hard and change is going to have an impact, but I really do hope that it's really taken into consideration as well, the operational costs, some of the efficiencies that it takes to have the best public education system that we can.
Thank you, Anita. Any other thoughts?
Janan, if I may, I'll give my kind of just closing thought if we're kind of wrapping up. To me, there's so much feedback that can be given, right? And there's been a lot of great feedback from the public. And frankly, I think that's a great thing, because we are passionate as a community about the schools in which our kids go and where they're getting their education. I think that's a good thing. And I think it's great that we live in a community where there's so much pride in the quality of the schools that people are fortunate to attend. My comment is, I think we could talk all night about very specific items and specific issues. I guess the best comfort that I had in listening to the community input and to everyone tonight is that the Board of Education will be looking at a variety of options, and they have the authority to carve out certain individual sections and really look at this and make some decisions. I wish we could give more detailed feedback on everything tonight, but with so many unknowns in terms of where that board is going to start looking at making small or vital tweaks to the process, I think that there's really not a lot we can say. I guess my just comment would be that I really appreciated the chance to be a part of this with everyone, and thank you guys very much for, I think everyone's been really active and engaged.
Thanks, Angela. Hannah, are you raising your hand?
I am.
Go ahead. She used the
I
I
am.
for clarification.
I guess I'll lower my hand now. I just wanted to add on to all the great comments from Tony and Angela, Anita. Thank you for speaking up. And everybody's thoughts, I thought were great, very thoughtful, very, considerate. You guys obviously took a lot of time to think about these issues. And I know that, many of us in this group have kids in the district currently. Some people in this group had kids in the district in the past. And some of us, like me, have children that will progress through school in the future. My child isn't in school yet. That said, I have a spouse who's a teacher at Washington. And so I just wanted to take this moment to say I was really happy to be a part of this task force. It was interesting. It was a learning experience. I felt privileged to hear all your thoughts and feedback. And not only that, but I just wanted to remind everyone that no matter what happens with the boundaries, the teachers of this district, regardless of what school they're teaching at, have the best interests of these children in their hearts. So I think that I know there are some contentious feelings at times, some contentious moments, but like the kids are going to be okay. These teachers care and they are going to do their best. So just wanted to say thanks to everyone.
Thank you, Hannah, for touching on that, and especially for bringing up the important point about those who are educators. To amplify that, they come to work every single day, and they're amazing. If we've learned anything about that through the past 2 months or however long we've been dealing with the coronavirus as a society, they are heroes in all of this. And the stories of what they do for students, what they do for those who are especially vulnerable and living on the margins that we get to hear in the news each day, that's inspiring. And we should all feel good knowing that when our kids in our community go to school, that they are being taught by those men and women.
Well, I think we're about to the point where we can wrap up, and I want to thank all of you for your commitment for the first 3 meetings and then sticking with us to do the meeting tonight. Everybody's world changed an awful lot in the last 8 to 10 weeks, and the teachers, the students, all of you as parents, and it's just been a challenging time. One of the reasons that I believe this process perhaps has gone more smoothly than many of us thought that it could is because of leadership and management. And Brian Maher is part of the reason that this process has gone well. He's a leader. He has proven that over 5 years, but he also has management skills that have helped to keep this district growing and progressing and improving. And this is one of the last meetings I'll get to have with him, and I want to thank him for his leadership. So on that note, thank you all and be safe.
Thanks, Kent.
Would anybody else like to say something nice about me?
Okay, that concludes the meeting. We're going to sign off here. Thank you for sticking with us in some of the challenges we had with the PowerPoint and such, but thanks for jumping on. This meeting is being recorded at the moment. We will get it out for the public. So your comments will be shared widely in that manner as well. Thank you all. If you have any other questions or things that you want to submit to the board, you can either email them directly, send it through Let's Talk, or send it directly to my email and I will forward it on to them. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.
It's very easy.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna get packed.